Hello and welcome to the I Hate Drums podcast with me, Mark, your teacher for this series. Today we're going to continue working with triplets, but this time in the form of a 12/8 ballad. So to begin with, we need to discuss what 12/8 actually means. And to do that, we're going to start by talking about what 4/4 means. These are both what we call time signatures. And once you become a bit more versed in time signatures, it basically gives you an indication of what the music is going to feel like, and also how you'll count it. On page 73 of my book, Intermediate 1, which in case you don't know already, you can find on my website, www.ihitdrums.co.uk, we have an explanation of the difference between 4/4 time and 12/8 time. Now all time signatures have a number on the top and a number on the bottom. And it's the number on the bottom that I actually want to start with, because this number tells you which note value you're dealing with first of all. So quite often the time signature will be 4/4, so that bottom number 4 is referring to quarter notes. If that bottom number is 8, you're dealing with eighth notes, and if that number is 16, you're dealing with 16th notes. This bottom number won't be anything like a 3 or a 7. So once you've established what kind of note value you're dealing with, you can then think about the top number in the time signature. So for 4/4, that top number is also 4. And this top number is referring to how many of those note values you have per bar. So when the bottom number is 4, that means you're dealing with quarter notes. And if the top number is 4, that means you have 4 quarter notes per bar. So 12/8 is the next time signature that we need to look at here. This is a time signature used in ballads. So for this, the bottom number is 8, which means we're dealing with eighth notes. And the top number is 12, which means we have 12 eighth notes per bar. Let's also say you had the time signature 7/16. All that would mean was that you're dealing with 16th notes, and that there are 7 of those 16th notes to a bar. A less common one, but it is possible. On page 74, we have 2 examples of triplets. The first example is triplets written in 4/4, and the second example is triplets written in 12/8. The main difference between these two is that when the time signature is 4/4, every triplet has to be notated with a 3 over the top so that you know that you're dealing with triplets. Whereas when it's in 12/8, you don't need those 3s, because when you're dealing with 12/8, you already should know that you're dealing with triplets. And exercise 7.1 illustrates this. We've got 2 different examples here, and the first one, the groove is predominantly an eighth note groove, and this is in 4/4, and then the fill in the 4th bar is a triplet fill. In the next example, we have exactly the same fill in the 4th bar, except these are a triplet-based groove, and it's actually a ballad groove here. So instead of having 1 and 2 and on the hi-hats, we have 1 and 2 and. So if you were playing a song that used fills within triplets, but most of the time the groove was just a straight eighth note pattern, you wouldn't write that in 12/8. You wouldn't need to, because most of the song is just a 4/4 kind of groove. And then any fill that happens to have triplets in it, you can just add those 3s to the notation, and that tells you that you're dealing with triplets for that particular section. If, however, you're dealing with grooves that are predominantly based around triplets, such as a ballad, then that will often be presented in 12/8, because anything played within 12/8 will automatically be based around triplets. Let's try each of those. So we're going to start with the first example of exercise 7.1. So this is the 4/4 time signature, playing 3 bars of an eighth note groove, followed by 1 bar of a triplet fill. Here we go.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, now let's try that ballad groove. So this is in 12/8 time signature. We've got 3 bars of a ballad groove and then that same triplet fill. And this time it's just going to be triplets all the way through. Here we go.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Now you might have noticed there that in the 12/8 groove, we have some dots next to the bass drum and the snare drum hits within those grooves. This is because a quarter note on its own, we already know, lasts for the same amount of time as 2 eighth notes. But when we're playing a 12/8 groove, the space between each bass and snare hit in the case of this groove needs to last for 3 eighth notes because we have 3 eighth notes within an eighth note triplet. Adding a dot actually adds an extra half value to that note. So normally a quarter note lasts for 2 eighth notes. Half of that would be another eighth note. So that dot represents another eighth note. So a dotted quarter note actually lasts for the length of 3 eighth notes. And a dot can appear next to any note value. So on page 75, we have a dotted minim, which lasts for 3 quarter notes. Or we have a dotted eighth note, which lasts for 3 16th notes. And you might not have realized it at the time, but in some of the fills that we looked at in a beginner's guide, we actually had a dotted eighth note in some of those variations, particularly when we were playing on beat 1, and then the next hit was on the A of 1, 1, E, and A. That first hit was a dotted eighth note. That first exercise should have given you a little bit of insight into a 12/8 groove or a ballad groove. On page 76, we have exercise 7.2, and here we have a selection of different grooves that you might play within a 12/8 time signature. The snare drums are always landing on beats 2 and 4, but the bass drum pattern gets progressively more complex. So just in case you weren't quite ready for exercise 7.1, let's try the first example of exercise 7.2. Here we go.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And now let's try the second example. So in this example, we're going to have a bass drum on beat 3, and then the next bass drum is going to be on the A of 3. So we're not playing a bass drum on that middle triplet. Let's give it a try. Here we go.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Now, you'll need the book to complete the rest of these examples. There's actually 5 more different grooves to try here, and I'd recommend you try all of those to get a good feel of what you're going to be doing within a ballad. But once you've tackled all of those, we can actually move straight on to the next song, which is called Unhinged Melody. The structure of this song is quite straightforward. We just have an A section and a B section, and once we get to the end of section B, you'll see it says DC al coda. Now, so far we've had DS al coda, which meant we had to return to that kind of squiggly S thing and then play until 2 coda. DC means we go back to the beginning of the song. So once you play through section B, you're going to jump back to section A and play through until bar number 4, where it says 2 coda at the end of that bar. And at that point, you'll just jump to the very last bar of the song, labelled coda, which is just a simple bass drum and crash hit, and that finishes the song. The tempo of this song is actually very slow as well, because most ballads aren't very fast. When you're playing with a triplet feel, once you get up to faster tempos, you generally wouldn't be hitting the hi-hat on every triplet. More often than not, this would kind of transform into more of a shuffle groove, which we'll be looking at in the future. And as for any tricky things to watch out for within the song, you've got a couple of open hi-hats within section A and a couple of triplet fills. And then within section B, we're actually on the ride cymbal, and we're introducing some of that hi-hat foot as well that we learnt in the hi-hat foot chapter. So let's give the song a listen. So this is Unhinged Melody, full speed, with drums. Here we go.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that song. Like I say, it's a nice slow one, so you can just take your time with it and get used to how those triplet grooves actually feel. If you don't yet have the book, then you can find this on my website, www.ihitdrums.co.uk, where it's available as a paperback or as an ebook. And all of the backing tracks for the book you can find online as well by following the link within the book. If you're listening to this, but you're actually just getting started out on the drums, then pop over to my website where you can actually get your first drum lesson for free. I prepared a lesson pack which contains a video tutorial and a PDF. So if you're brand new to the drums, that's a really good place to start. There's a few grooves in there and a few song suggestions to get you going. But until next time, enjoy!